Well, it certainly seems as a casual observer of all things Alabama politics that the more money the education apparatus in the state gets, the worse they do. The worse they do, the more money they get. Well, I have questions about this, and so we're bringing on Senator Arthur Orr, the chairman of the Education Trust Fund, to answer these questions and more coming up on 1819 News, the podcast.
We have an incredible culture here in the state of Alabama, but our politics and public policy don't reflect the people of Alabama. Media drives culture. Culture is what drives politics and public policy.
Welcome, everyone, to 1819 News, the podcast. I'm Bryan Dawson, CEO of 1819 News and host of this here podcast, where we are in pursuit of a free and flourishing Alabama every single week. I think one of the things that is required for us to be a free and flourishing state is for the citizens to pay attention to what's going on, to know who the people are that are representing them, people who are in positions of power, authority, influence, whatever, so that they know and can understand and make their voices heard. I think one of the coolest things that's going on right now, albeit extremely taxing on the bandwidth of 1819 News and my soul and that of my reporters' souls, is the municipal elections. I've never seen this much engagement in the municipal elections. And people are realizing that the more local you get, the more influence you have, and the more your voice can be heard. And so for the longest time, everyone was just focused on Washington, D.C. Man, Putin, Zelensky, Nancy Pelosi, Justin Trudeau. And it was this geopolitics, global this and national that. And we can't make a difference at that level. We send people up there that we hope can make a difference. But as far as our efforts and our time, where is it best used? I think people are finally starting to wake up that the closer to home you get, the more leverage you have and the more influence you have, the more you're able to actually make a difference. And so with that, I want to bring on one of the most popular, most powerful senators. Usually those two things don't go together. But Senator Arthur Orr, who's the chairman of the Education Trust Fund. He's someone I've gotten to know and just have the utmost respect for, and he's someone that everyone does. Typically people they're in their camp or they're in their spot or they've got their group or whatever, and it seems to me that Senator Orr has been able to stay above the fray on that and just do his job and have the respect of his peers, and I think that is pretty admirable. So, Senator, thank you so much for taking the time to join us.
Thank you, Brian. Good to be with you, and appreciate all that 1819 has brought to the debate in the state as far as bringing news and focusing on important issues that need focusing on. So I appreciate what you've brought and your team. It's been extremely important in getting the word out.
Well, thank you very much. So what we typically do, and what I think is valuable, is getting to know the people who are in the positions that make decisions. And I've had it's something about North Alabama guys, but I don't know. I mean, maybe it's 50-50. I don't know. I don't know what the ratio is. I'm not going to say it, but for everyone from Jamie Keel to Ernie Yarborough and the guys up there and there's just a good group of guys, Scott Stadhagen, from North Alabama. And there's some problem people from North Alabama too. I won't mention them, but, there's really great folks up there, and I would add you to that list. And so you're in the Decatur area, or what is your Senate district?
Yeah, so my Senate district is all of Morgan County, which I-65 comes right through the middle of it almost. And then southeast Limestone County, so south of Athens, and then all the East Limestone area that's growing so rapidly that Huntsville's growing into, in the city of Madison, and then southwest Madison County, so the Huntsville Airport. I used to have part of the Redstone Arsenal area, but southwest Madison County. So it's a nice district, but we've had to shrink in the redistricting scenarios the last 10 years because of the population growth. We're growing.
Yeah. Well, there's no doubt about that. North Alabama is exploding. South is as well. Baldwin County, I think between North Alabama and Baldwin County, it's pretty neat. Hopefully the people that are moving here are conservative. This is me praying and crossing my fingers and hoping that we don't turn into California. But no, it is. It's a beautiful, beautiful place. Incredible growth. great stuff going on up in North Alabama. So talk just a little bit about kind of who you are, where you were born. Tell us about your parents, what you did for a living, and how did you get into politics?
Okay. We'll try to move along on this, but I was born and reared here in Morgan County. The family's been here over 200 years on my father's side. Mother from Memphis. Went to school here locally, then off to college up in North Carolina to a school that nobody has to worry about when it comes to football or even basketball these days, Wake Forest. And they're not an offense to anyone. And then I came back, went to law school. And then after law school, Brian, I really had spent time in Haiti and had a real passion for the developing world and the poor overseas. So I joined the U.S. Peace Corps. And the computer sent me to the Kingdom of Nepal at the time, which is the Himalayan mountains over in Asia. So I spent a little over 2 years there in Nepal. My job was to train teachers. I come back, I practiced law with a law firm in Decatur, become a partner, and then was single at the time and felt God calling me to go back overseas to help the poor, and joined Habitat for Humanity and spent a little over 4 years with Habitat in South Asia, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and Malaysia. And then came back to the U.S., and Cook's Pest Control approached me about being their in-house general counsel. So we're now about 2001. And about 2003-04, really felt the, I keep going back to, I felt very called, but the Spirit kind of moving me to get engaged in public service and to get involved in our state government. At the time, that, as you recall, the Democrats controlled everything and were running the state. They had super majorities. Bob Riley was governor, but certainly outgunned in the House and Senate to get any of his agenda completed. So after a lot of prayer and talking to people who had never been involved in politics before, threw my hat in the ring, if you will, and the incumbent, who was a Democrat, decided to step aside at the time. And then the Democrats went and recruited a very, very popular probate judge, been in office for 20 or 30 years, had at the time, 2006, the most expensive political race, Senate race, I believe, in the state history. At that time, it's been far exceeded since then. It was ugly. It got to the point I didn't want to open the mailbox. I didn't want to listen to the radio. I didn't want to watch the TV because they were pushing on all cylinders. But fortunately, won I think it was 63-37 race over the Democrat, and went to Montgomery and was in the minority at the time. We had 12 Republicans and the 23 Democrats, and we were outgunned, outmanned, as they say in the Hamilton play. But we tried to make a difference for 4 years, stopping the Democratic onslaught, or they could pretty much do what they wanted. But then the 2010 elections happened, and that was such a watershed moment in our state's history, where the Republicans took over the House and the Senate, and we were really able to start getting our agenda done after that election, starting immediately with a special session and that Governor Riley called for ethics reform. You'd seen so many corrupt things happening, and the gambling trials were, a lot of arrests related to gaming and gambling, bribery, and all these things were going on. So glad to have a clean slate in Montgomery. And I think over the last 15 years, we've made a lot of progress as far as where our state is today, as opposed to where it was back in those days.
Wow. That is, I love asking those questions, because every person I brought on, I get to kind of hear, and I'm informed, and I know if I'm learning and interested, my listeners are as well. So thank you for sharing that. So as a senator, you've kind of risen to one of the most important positions, I think, in the state, is the chairman of the Education Trust Fund. Obviously, the state of Alabama, the biggest challenge I think that we have, and we have many, is in the realm of education. It's complicated. It's complex. There's all kinds of challenges. I've been quoted as saying, often, as I'm talking about the education, it seems, and maybe you can diffuse this for me, but it seems like the more money that we put in education, the worse education gets, or the worse education gets, the more money they put in there. And so both of those things from a business incentive standpoint are kind of, and then if you think too, education trust fund growth, the education budget will nearly double since Ivey came into office in 2017. And when she leaves in 2027, are there any tangible benefits that you've seen from that pretty radical increase in funding?
Well, I certainly get what you're saying about wanting to see better outputs and better performance. And I would say this, one of the things I've seen in chairing the Education Budget Committee is that so many of the initiatives that have come forward in the last 6-7 years have originated in the legislature. In other words, it's not from the state school board. And ultimately, our state school board are the people that are responsible for moving the needle in education. We all have some responsibility, but you would like to think the state school board would be bringing initiatives, bringing ideas and things that need to be tweaked or changed, but haven't seen a lot of that. And I go back to the Numeracy Act, and that's, the third grade holdback bill. If you can't read at the end of the third grade, then you don't go on to the fourth grade. We'll try it, help you in summer school, etc. But what had been happening for so long was children would be socially promoted. They could fake it up 5th, 6th, 7th grade, get through middle school, and then by the time they reached high school, they would either drop out, kind of spin out of control, become a discipline problem because they couldn't read, or in some places actually be able to graduate and still can't read. They're functionally illiterate, and they'll never, be able to achieve their true success. So, working with Representative Terry Collins, we got the Numeracy Act through, and then not long thereafter, we were 52nd in math. After DC and after the military schools, you can't go any lower. And so we passed the Numeracy Act. And I could go on and on as far as the educational reforms that have originated, again, in the legislature. School discipline, something that, you hear legislators hear from, educators about how difficult a time they have managing their classrooms and couldn't get the reinforcement from down the hall in the principal's office. So it's not the best scenario to be passing legislation or bills on this, but goodness, if you can't get activity or action out of those in charge, then you got to do what you got to do. So anyway, I say all that to say this: Choose Act. You go down the list. Hopefully, Brian, over time, we will see an improvement in our education system. And we have started seeing that. We tested in the 30s, both in math and in literacy here in the last round. So we've made great strides because we used to be, in the 40s or 50s. And now we're moving in the right direction, and we need to certainly keep the pedal to the metal.
Awesome. One of the things I really appreciate about your answer there, I ask these questions all the time, and typically I get some, malaise of how excellent the school is in Alabama. And it's like, come on, man. To hear you, be able to square up with the real challenges, but also cast kind of a positive vision and direction, I think is, I think that's the way that it should be talked about. And I appreciate that. And, I am benefiting from the Choose Act. I have 7 children. So I have 2 that are in a classical Christian academy, going to that, really excited about that. And then we've got, a bunch of homeschoolers left, and we took advantage of the 2 homeschoolers with the 2,000 apiece or whatever. And so, we're benefiting greatly from that. I think, in my opinion, between, inserting competition in, with the Choose Act, school choice, giving people a choice, I think is going to yield very positive results. maybe ending tenure. But again, it's like you said, the legislature can only do so much. And I think one of the problems that that people fall into is that they want everyone to legislate everything into accordance, or that another bill, that's what's going to fix it. And it's like, well, I mean, it's like you look at the national level, the left kept saying, we need an immigration bill that can fix this. And it's like, no, you just have to enforce the immigration laws that you have on the books. If you would just do that. And so at some point there's going to be someone who just has to do something. And it sounds like the school board has a responsibility in that. Do you sense, and again, I don't know, I'm still learning a lot of this stuff. The Alabama Education Association, obviously at one time an absolute, liberal plague to the state, run under Paul Hubbard and Joe Reed, and all of that stuff. And then Riley comes in and did what he did, to where that they can no longer pull their dues from people's checks, et cetera, et cetera. AEA kind of becomes a shell of its former self, but now it's kind of coming back, and they're giving money to Republicans. And you're starting, from what we've seen, seemed like that was one of the things that was kind of keeping school choice and some of the positive things from happening. In your opinion, what is the teachers union, the Alabama Education Association, if you will? What is their role in helping, hindering? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, so absolutely, and I was there for that historical those years that you mentioned when Paul Hubbard was in charge, and you would see hundreds and hundreds of teachers all in the same T-shirts walking the halls of the legislature, up in the gallery screaming during budget time or during a bill that they may not like, and a lot of just a lot of power politics being played by the AEA. You don't see that as much anymore. I know they were the historical boogeyman out there,
yeah,
but you just don't see it. And take, for example, the Choose Act. I don't recall, and I sponsored the bill along with Representative Garrett. I didn't see a lot of pushback or bussing people in town and fighting tooth and nail, and emails, robocalls, the whole bit. Did not see a concerted opposition like you would have seen 20 years ago. And I don't know if they believed that it was just destined to happen, and fighting it made no sense. I don't know what their political strategy is, but I do say, perhaps, they are a different animal and become like other associations. They've got their interests. They represent their members and their interests, but it's not the power politics that you used to see 20 years ago.
How were they leading up to the Choose Act, like prior to that? So, I mean, I think for like 12 years, Senator Del Marsh was trying to push forward some type of school choice, charter schools, education savings accounts, what's the thing? Vouchers, that kind of stuff. And it would, he couldn't even get a bill out of committee. And then there was that change and that shift. And I have my own kind of theories of what I think kind of happened. But, what do you think changed, and where was the AEA kind of on that leading up to that?
I really can only speak for myself. And, so in saying that, Brian, my suspicion is that it was much more targeted to individuals. Okay. In other words, you've got a bill, let's say back in 2015 or 16, in committee. And, it's a Del Mar School scholarship bill or accountability bill or whatever. And the AEA has visited with committee members, expressed their opposition, whatever. And that subtle pressure that members would feel, and they would not go along with passing something like that out of committee, or try to play, let's send it to a subcommittee, or delay kind of action, trying to get the chairman to put it off, and all the games that are played in Montgomery. So it's not as overt today, and they may still be playing with that kind of game, but I haven't felt it personally.
Okay. No, that's good. I mean, that's very good to know. Good to hear. I hate this because there's so many good positive things I want to talk to you about that I see you involved in as well, but the education stuff is just so front and center, and then that's obviously your kind of main thing. So the direction of higher ed in Alabama sees more out-of-state students seeking to attend Alabama's flagship universities, Auburn and Alabama. There are more out-of-state students than in-state students accepted into the University of Alabama. In your opinion, should Alabama taxpayers foot the bill for education institutions that put a priority on out-of-state students?
So I'll give you the argument of the universities. So they would say, they're paying several times the in-state tuition. So in other words, those out-of-staters are paying for themselves, and there's a benefit to whichever university they're attending. But some states, take Virginia, North Carolina, they have restricted the number of out-of-state students that come to their public universities, thinking mainly UNC and UVA in those situations. We're going to, Brian, next week, towards the end of this month, we are going to be kicking off a round of hearings regarding higher education funding. And, too many times I've heard of it as a legislator, well, we give X university all this money, but they have no accountability. Well, they do have accountability. There's a board of trustees that I think every one of them receives a nomination from the governor and then is confirmed by the Senate. So there's some presumably accountability there. But you get into questions like, what's the completion rate? What's the graduation rate of a particular cohort coming into the college 4 to 6 years later? Are they graduating on time? Are they spending out of control? Or are they producing graduates that for jobs that Alabama needs? Are they going into fields that we need? Or are they, for example, a Middle Eastern studies program that we're funding that really isn't producing graduates that we need here in Alabama? So those kind of questions will get asked in this legislative committee, finding, where are we, and are there things that we could do? First generation students, should we not help first generation students a bit more? Are the colleges doing that and taking that role on and trying to get them through the colleges? So it's a cornucopia of different things that we can look at, but we want to bring better the accountability with the dollars the taxpayers are sending to their higher ed institutions.
Yeah. That's a perfect segue to where I want to go next, is exactly what you're talking about in that realm. So is Alabama's divisive concepts ban having an impact, and should state government agencies, institutions have funding threatened if they're not 100% compliant?
Yeah, if they're not complying with the law, absolutely.
Yeah.
Unequivocally. And, we have the lawsuit that there was the judge ruled just here recently that he was not going to, I believe it was put a TRO or an injunction on, he's going to let things play out, but we still have a hearing or a trial on the merits, but no preliminary injunction, if I recall the story correctly. But all that to say, yes, if an institution is not following the laws of the state, there's nothing that says we can't reduce funding, cut funding, whatever, if they're not going to comply with the legislation that we're passing.
Absolutely. And it's crazy, man. Like the stuff at the universities, that's obviously a hot subject for us. You're talking about the place where the best and brightest in your state, and apparently from other states, but we'll stick with in our state, we're sending them to these institutions. And this is where they're going to be forged, and they're going to kind of have that rite of passage in this, place where they're going to be, inculcated and, I guess indoctrinated can be a positive or negative term, but like they will be taught, shaped, molded, forged, and then launched out into society. And it's such an important place. And the left, liberals and progressives, they understand the importance of those places. And so they've done a full-on assault and attack, and they are so slimy and slippery and everything else. And it's like, okay, well, we don't have diversity and equity and inclusion anymore. We just have an office of cultural, inclusiveness or whatever. And it's the same guy that was doing the DEI stuff, right?
Well, yeah,
and they just changed the name.
Let's follow the U.S. Supreme Court law when it comes to admissions. Let's have a race neutral admissions policy, and we ought to have a race neutral campus, and just let's follow those principles. And what, I don't know if you saw it recently. There was an article talking about a study that had been done where I think a couple of college professors had taken artificial intelligence, AI, gotten their hands on the syllabi of numerous colleges. I think the number was over 2,000 syllabi from courses of study that sounded like they were race-based or gender-based or whatever, and analyzed the books that were being taught in these particular classes. And I think if recollection serves me correctly, the balance, Brian, was like 90+% on the left as far as books, gender studies, race studies, whatever, all leftist, very leftist material, all being trumpeted in these classes per the syllabus, versus 2%, 3% is my recollection for any right-wing, type books or literature being, required to be read by the students in a particular syllabus. So, what a disparity, that these, and no wonder that the colleges and universities are cranking out students that have such a leftist bent on their history and on their perception of the world, because they've gotten it all at colleges and universities, and the taxpayers of Alabama and the other 49 states, we're paying for all this. But it's nowhere close to fair and balanced. It's nothing but a indoctrination game. And you're right, the left has figured it out, and certainly they've been doing it for decades.
Yeah, their diversity lacks diversity.
Well put.
It's the most non-diverse diversity I've ever seen. And I'm just thinking, like, even Sanford's not a publicly funded school, but like even seeing institutions like Sanford and what they've done with, going back and creating a racial justice task force. We've exposed Auburn for doing literally race-based admissions. We looked at their admissions office and proved that they were actually doing race-based admissions, and on it goes. The University of Alabama, there's people that are dropping out and leaving. Trying to think of the teacher that they basically let go. I interviewed him on my podcast, and he had the craziest Polish last name. Anyway, but it's everywhere. I guess the point that I'm trying to make is it is everywhere.
Well, God bless Donald Trump for having the chutzpah and the wherewithal and the backbone to get Secretary McMahon and others to take this on and really call it for what it is. It's discrimination. It's reverse discrimination. Let's go back to, let's treat everybody the same, and let's treat them fairly and rightly. And don't you dare discriminate on basis of race. Either way, whatever way, just don't do it. It's off the table.
Meritocracy through and through.
Yeah.
If you're running a ministry or you own a business, my guess is that you've been thinking about starting a podcast for a while now, but for various reasons, it hasn't happened yet. Send me an email. I need to personally connect you with Yonder Child Media. They built this studio in 2 days and tackle all of the production. I just come in, start talking, and leave. It's that easy. They do everything else. Whether you want to record at your business or a home office like they just built for me, you come in, start talking, and Yonder Child will do everything else. Send me an email. That's going to be BRYAN, Bryan.Dawson, DAWSON at 1819news.com, and I'd be happy to personally connect you. I joke that we're going to put a section on our website called "When That Will Never Happen Here Happens Here Again," because there's this thing where we're in Alabama and everyone says, "Oh, this is Alabama. That'll never happen here." And then we report on a story about some pervert or pedophile in a public school or, whatever. And it's like, well, that's never going to happen here. It's like, well, when that which will never happen here happens here again, right here. On that, there's probably one of the most disturbing things that we've reported on. I would love just kind of an update or your thoughts on it. The work we've done exposing the I think it's called the Magic City Acceptance School. Kind kind of a bizarre, charter school that's receiving, state funds, and it seems to be very little educational about it. It seems very much sexually indoctrination and grooming oriented. There was rumors flying around that it was going to be defunded, that it wasn't. What is the kind of the status there? What are your thoughts, and who is it that makes that decision, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, so that school answers to the state charter commission, which is established. I believe the membership's appointed gubernatorially. There may be some slots where other leaders in state government have appointments to oversee schools like the academy there. As far as funding, there was that was taken in consideration, whether they were truly doing their mission. And in the last round of budgets, so there was some adjustments made. There were some adjustments made,
Good.
and I think we got to keep reviewing it. But the Charter School Commission is really the frontline entity that needs to address the issue. But if not, I certainly have no problem again using the power of the purse if we need to send the appropriate messages.
Awesome. Yeah, that one's just kind of, I don't know. I mean, the more we look into it, the more we see what's going on there. I mean, I never thought I'm 40 and I feel like I'm like 70. I'm like back in my day, I never thought I would see this in my lifetime, when I'm 40, that I would be seeing the things that I'm seeing, and the stuff we talk about on 1819, and probably the stuff that you have to deal with in the legislature. It's like, are we really doing a bathroom bill? It's like, yes, we are. We have to. I hate that we have to, but we have to, right? Or, the divisive concepts, or just insert any of the just absolute asinine nonsense that we have to report on here and that you guys have to craft legislation for there, just because of how decadent and kind of vile our culture has become. And I think the Magic City Acceptance Academy is kind of the culmination of all of that decadence all piled into one school with, I feel like if like law enforcement went in there, they could probably arrest everybody for child abuse, but that's conjecture on my part.
Yeah, I have to confess, I don't know that much about the school itself. I know what I read on your website occasionally or in your news accounts, but if members bring me things and are concerned and want to do something, that certainly gets my attention.
Gotcha. Understood. Well, what else, Senator? I mean, like I said, I had the opportunity to get you on here, and so I wanted to dive into education, and that's obviously something that's very serious. And you start talking about the future. I think one of the things conservatives just struggle with, period, is that we're very much lateral. Is conservative Christians, we laterally evangelize. We don't think about vertical, like going down. When we start talking about policy and politics and elections, we're thinking about 4 years down the road, and the left is thinking about 40 years down the road, right? They have a 40-year generational vision. We have a 4-year election vision, and it's why we get outflanked. And you start talking about education. I mean, it is the key difference maker. Like, if we can get that on track, and it's a lot. I get that, but I've been very pleased to see some of the positive things, specifically the Choose Act, and I'm sure with Tuberville coming in, I think they'll be able to have some conversations and make some changes, and that is the hope for the future is our education. So thank you for the work you do on that. But is there anything else you want to dive into while we're here?
Well, I mean, I've got so many things. Bills, I know I get teased sometimes, Brian, for filing a lot of bills, but you bring up education, and I'll kind of point this one out. I think you would agree with me. The biggest change in somebody's life is their relationship with God through Jesus Christ. And that is, what I strongly believe. But in our public education system, of course, that's not for the educators, from in the classrooms to impart. But we want our children to be successful. We want them to go on and succeed. And one of the bills I sponsored this year that passed and is now in the code and will hopefully be inculcated in the children as they come through, Dr. Mackey says mainly middle school, is the success sequence. And I came across this 2 or 3 years ago in a Wall Street Journal article. And my concern is, if you're a child and you're, in inner city or very rural area and you're in poverty today, how can we help you get out? And, we talk about education, or we talk about, just doing the right thing. But if you're a child, what can you do what can you see? How can you see forward a pathway to get out of the poverty or the conditions that you're in? And the success sequence is very simple. It's research based. It's been proved time and time again. But it's three things, and this is what the kids will learn. It's finish high school, get a diploma, get a high school diploma, get a job. Doesn't matter if it's McDonald's, Burger King, whatever, but get out, get that diploma, and get working, get busy, and then don't have children out of wedlock.
Yep.
If you're going to have children, get married, because childcare and the cost of having children, if you're a single parent. And in the House hearing, one of the representatives from one of the urban areas said, I grew up in poverty. Nobody ever told me these things. I grew up in a single parent household. And if I had known this, obviously very successful now, having reached the Alabama legislature, good for her. But if I'd known these things, as simple as they are, they're attainable by a young person, a 17-year-old, an 8-year-old. 18-year-old. I can see how to do these three things. And the research says if you do these three things, if you graduate and you're coming out of a family in poverty, by the time you're 28 or 10 years later, you are 96% assured of not being in poverty. So in other words, there's a 4% failure rate. And how important it is to teach our young people values such as that, or a roadmap, if you will, of how to get out of poverty. And again, the bill didn't get a lot of fanfare like the Alpha health coverage or other bills that which the energy bill that all the business community really liked. But to me, Brian, a bill like that or a law like that will hopefully, God willing, change lives. And that, at the end of the day, gives me much more solace and gratification than helping in other areas where people maybe can get help through other means. But hopefully, this law, the laws that we passed will help them. But these kids in these very difficult, poor situations, they don't have a lot of help. And they certainly have a lot of distractions and a lot of things that can get them, going down the wrong path.
Yeah. No, that's incredible. I was unaware of that bill. Again, Jeff pays very, very close, as well as Craig and Caleb pay very close attention to all the different legislation. And it is funny, though, the stuff that gets fanfare and the stuff that doesn't, and then how simple or complex. And it's like, probably it sounds like that bill is going to do more good than any other bill that was passed this last session. And it's the simplest. It's not the craziest. It's not the most complex. You don't need to have a law degree to read it and understand it. And if you really just like the simplicity of it, but we know that the number one statistic that brings people out of poverty is having a father in the home. And so that's exactly what you're saying. And it's like, don't have kids until you're married, because if you're married, you'll have a father, you will have a mother, and you will have children. And that dynamic right there with people who have an education and have a job, you will be above the poverty line if you do those things. And those things are very simple to do. But the culture, and we were on a newsroom call today talking about, and again, I don't know anything about it, but just this Roblox game. I don't know if you've heard anything about this, but it's this crazy, it's going to come up in the legislature the next session, I promise. But it's basically this like video game that's like an online video game like Minecraft or some of these other games where children are basically being sexually solicited through it. And it just reminded me of so much of the vigilance that we have to have as parents for our children to protect them from the decadence of our culture and this desire for sick people to take their hearts, minds, souls, and sometimes, their bodies, God forbid, in some of these situations. But it's mind-boggling. And then if you put yourself into a position of like someone who's in poverty and grew up and didn't have a mom or a dad, and you have this simple solution of, okay, all I got to do is graduate, get a job, and get married and have a family. Like, super simple, because the culture is going to be telling you to be promiscuous, telling you to do all these other things. And it's like, no, I've got these simple steps. So I think that really is good, and appreciated.
Well, thank you. And, as far as other things, I try to be proactive. It's a bit nerdy, a bit wonky, but another bill that was sponsored this past session that I was proud of, actually, it was 3 bills. But you look across the country and you see a real deficit for the future of energy production. And what are in all the AI data centers and the high energy needs and wattage that they need, or as far as to run those, where is Alabama with all that? So we put together a 3-bill package to help with transmission and red tape and bureaucracy, knock that down. Another bill for the funding mechanism, and then a 3rd bill that I sponsored was to set up an energy infrastructure bank. And basically we'll be offering revolving loans, no interest, very low interest, to help our co-ops and our municipal providers, electrical providers, throw up substations and other things that they need to do when a project comes calling to town, or if they've got a greenfield site and they need to have the power there. And that's one of the problems we have in our state. We have a pretty good bit of production, but it's not deliverable at the sites where we need it delivered. And when a project, meaning a company looking to locate in Alabama wants to locate here, they're like, well, how long does it take to get the adequate power supply here? 3 years, 4 years. We can't have that. We got to be ready. And so this bill will help facilitate that, and also help with equipment. We've got some long lead time equipment. It takes 4 years to get, transformers, switches, etc. And we'll get options together. And anyway, very, as others have said, not I, but, forward thinking, trying to think in advance and look down the road how we can address these needs so we can continue to prosper here in Alabama.
That's awesome. Well, I think this has been a great conversation. I know I learned a lot in the 40 minutes we've been on here, and we're going to be doing an overtime segment, guys, for you who are listening. We're going to be talking about immigration. It's been kind of one of the biggest things that Trump ran on. We're seeing it. We all experience it. We all walk outside. I think I want something as simple as being able to, walk around town and hear English spoken in my own country. Call me crazy. But there's a tension between businesses that need to keep doing what they're doing for society, and then being able to find employees, mixed with the fact that we absolutely have to get people who are not assimilated and acclimated to our culture, out of our nation. And so, what is the solution? Well, we're going to talk about that in the overtime segment. But Senator Orr, thank you so much for taking the time to join us.
Thank you, Brian. Glad to be with you.
Awesome. All right, guys. Well, that'll wrap it up for this week. If you're not a member, that means you'll miss out on the overtime segment I'm going to do with Senator Orr. So go now to the website, 1819news.com. There's a button at the top that says Become a Member. Click it. Membership start as little as $5 a month, though you should give us way more money than that because we're that awesome and we definitely deserve it. So please go sign up to become a member. You'll get cool merch. You get access to behind-the-scenes content like we're about to record. But more than that, you'll be the citizen in citizen-supported journalism. So please go do that now. And as always, until next time, put your trust in God and keep your powder dry.